For a generation, Eddie Murphy was a name synonymous with joy, laughter, and Hollywood superstardom. His films, stand-up specials, and iconic characters carved him a permanent place in American entertainment. As a young man, Eddie Murphy's presence alone could light up the screen, and his ability to make audiences laugh made him an essential figure in the entertainment world. However, behind the brightness of his fame lay a more complex human story. His rise to success came with personal sacrifices, early grief, and a lifelong struggle with the pressures of living under constant public scrutiny. As Eddie enters his later years, his story invites a deeper reflection on the toll of fame, the joy of creativity, and the emotional endurance required to maintain it all. A childhood marked by absence. Eddie Murphy was born on April 3, 1961, in Brooklyn, New York, into a working-class family. His father, Charles Edward Murphy, worked as a New York City traffic officer and moonlighted as a comedian. His father's influence unknowingly planted the seeds of Eddie's own comedic future. But when Eddie was just 8 years old, tragedy struck. His father died as a result of violence, an event that left a void in Eddie's young life. This early loss marked Eddie profoundly, and as time passed, his memories of his father began to fade. The grief was not something Eddie could easily articulate, but the absence remained. A constant, silent companion that would shape his emotional landscape for years to come. Separation and survival. After the death of Eddie's father, his mother, Lillian, struggled with her mental health, leading to a period where Eddie and his brother Charlie were separated from her care. Eddie spent a year in foster care, an experience he would later describe as one of the most difficult chapters of his life. Removed from his familiar surroundings, Eddie learned how to adapt quickly to uncertainty, relying on humor as a coping mechanism. It was during this time that Eddie discovered the power of laughter, not only as a source of joy, but as qualulashuri onsi so fortress eri estrashinchi survival. Humor became his shield, allowing him to navigate through emotional turbulence and providing him with a sense of control when everything around him felt unstable. In the absence of consistent parental guidance, Eddie turned to imitation and performance as a way to cope with his situation. He mimicked voices, characters, and cartoons, often making his family laugh as a form of reassurance. It was not the applause of an audience that Eddie sought, but the comfort of knowing he could bring joy to those closest to him. Later in life, he would reflect that humor was not merely a distraction from his struggles, but a means of enduring. The comedy became Eddie's lifeline, a way of transforming pain into something that could be shared with others. This instinct for turning his pain into laughter would evolve into a lifelong calling, one that he would carry into his professional career. A family reunited, but forever changed. When Eddie's mother recovered and remarried, the family reunited and moved to Long Island, where they lived a modest but stable life. While the stability one proposal welcome cool over one proposal welcome change, the emotional scars from Eddie's early childhood remained. The wounds of loss and displacement did not vanish simply because life improved. These early experiences shaped Eddie in ways he would not fully understand until much later. He carried these quiet wounds with him, affecting his emotional expressions, his relationships, and his ambitions. Though he had regained a sense of family stability, the boy who had learned to perform, to survive, had also learned to perform in public. It was a skill that would define his future, both professionally and personally. The SNL breakthrough. When Eddie Murphy auditioned for Saturday Night Live, he was still a teenager, competing in a space dominated by established performers. Initially cast in a limited role, Eddie made the most of every opportunity he was given. His characters resonated with audiences instantly, blending sharp social commentary with fearless physical comedy. As the show struggled with low ratings, Eddie's performances revitalized the program. Within a short time, he became the emotional core of SNL, earning widespread recognition as one of the show's most influential cast members. The fame that came so quickly was not without pressure, however. Eddie was thrust into the spotlight at an age when most young adults are still figuring out their identities, adding complexity to his already challenging career. Hollywood's new star film studios quickly took notice of Eddie Murphy's talent, and before long, he was making a name for himself on the big screen. His early films showcased his ability to captivate audiences with his charisma and sharp comedic timing. The box office numbers soared, and Eddie became one of Hollywood's brightest stars. His rise to fame was meteoric, and for a time he seemed unstoppable. But with fame came the pressure to constantly deliver bigger and better performances. Each role had to be more outrageous, more memorable, and more successful than the last. Eddie found himself caught in the whirlwind of expectations, where the demand for laughter never ceased and the space for quiet reflection became scarce. Fame as responsibility. As Eddie's career continued to rise, so did the pressure to maintain his momentum. The public, eager for more, wanted Eddie to be the same funny, larger-than-life figure they had come to adore. Hollywood, too, expected a steady stream of hits. The demands of fame weighed on Eddie, who later reflected that he missed out on many of the experiences that make up a normal young adulthood. Instead of enjoying typical milestones, he was under constant scrutiny, with each success raising the bar for the next. Fame, which had once felt like a gift, began to feel more like a responsibility, a burden that Eddie had to carry alone. Love, family, and public image. In the early 1990s, Eddie married Nicole Mitchell, and they built a family together, adding 5 children to their lives. From the outside, their marriage seemed to represent the perfect blend of family and fame. Eddie spoke frequently about fatherhood as his greatest source of pride, and his public image as a devoted family man softened his persona. But private life rarely matches the public narrative, and when Eddie's marriage ended, it marked not just a personal heartbreak, but the collapse of an identity he had long cultivated. The end of the relationship exposed Eddie to the harsh realities of living in the public eye, where even the most personal moments are scrutinized. Relationships under a microscope. After his divorce, Eddie's personal life became increasingly visible to the public. Every misstep, legal matter, and emotional struggle played out in the headlines. What might have been private for others was laid bare for all to see. The intense scrutiny made it difficult for Eddie to grow emotionally, as every personal issue was amplified beyond measure. While he found great joy in fatherhood, romantic stability remained elusive. These challenges reinforced Eddie's realization that fame often makes it harder to find peace. Success, he learned, could not replace the emotional stability that came in private loss within the family. In 2017, Eddie Murphy experienced another profound loss with the death of his brother Charlie Murphy. The two shared not only a sibling bond, but also a creative partnership. Charlie's passing left Eddie devastated, reminding him of the fragility of life and the preciousness of those closest to us. Eddie paid tribute to his brother in a quiet and meaningful way by naming his son after Charlie, a gesture that spoke volumes about his love and respect. The grief Eddie felt was not something to be publicized, but something to be quietly processed. A reminder that even in the world of fame, deep loss is felt in silence.